welcome. It is September 11th. Some good history there. It's Monday, and this is the Public Works meeting with Dan and Dan.
And Wood.
And Wood. Chris Bosley is up for the first couple agreements here for us. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. So the first agreement and grant deed that I have before you today is for the Medina intersection that we are currently in construction on at Ironwood. The blue outlined property there, we need to acquire some right-of-way from them and an easement. So this is an ask to get this agreement and grant deed approved so that we can get some right-of-way from them to formalize this project. Do you have any questions on this?
On this?
On this one?
Oh, so Chris,
Yes.
just to clear this up, because I can get so confused with this, what's the difference between a right-of-way and what's the difference between an easement?
Well, easements a lot of times are temporary. We do have permanent easements for things like utilities and things like this, but this is right-of-way for the actual road width from sidewalk to sidewalk where we would be maintaining snow plowing, things like that.
Okay, and the cost is $1?
Correct.
How often does it become $1?
I just saw it within the last month. It was also $1, and I'm not sure the reason for that.
Because before we'd have to buy these things, like up on Government Way, we had to buy them.
Right. The property owner was willing to work with us on this because they see an advantage to what we're doing with this. There will be a benefit to them, so it was a no cost, as was the other side from Parkwood Business Properties.
Well, that sounds really good, and if you guys haven't been, I mean, you've probably driven up there.
Well, I was going to say that's kind of a dated picture. I go by there about 2 or 3 times a day, so yeah, most of the work looks like it's almost done.
Correct, yes. We got a right of entry agreement from them early on while we were trying to figure out how many people from the condominium association needed to sign the agreement to make this legal.
And could you, related to this, could you kind of explain that the part of the point of this is that the access to the hospital is going to be, is it shifted off Ironwood to up a block, or?
Yeah,
fit in.
so if you could follow my cursor there, the new intersection will kind of go at an angle like this.
Oh,
and so it'll line up for the parking garage and then line up for Medina to come down here to Emma.
Is that signalized?
The intersection at Ironwood will be.
That is Ironwood. You mean at 95?
Yeah, well, Medina and Ironwood is going to have a signal. Not yet, because we're waiting for the signal to come in. They're supposed to be paving the last of that project today, but we won't allow all traffic movements out of there until the signal is in place, so we don't get people trying to turn left across there. There's a new signal that was installed at Ironwood and 95, and then the signal at Emma and 95.
If you order those from Amazon Prime, you can get them in 2 days.
I've heard.
And cheaper. Any other questions, guys?
That's good for now.
Yeah, look for a motion, please.
I'd make a motion to approve the agreements and grant deed for right-of-way from Ironwood Professional Plaza Condominium Association for the new Medina Street intersection and recommend for council.
Second.
Move in a second. Any other questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Oh, yeah.
Aye. Moving along, thanks, Chris. Next up, agreement for permanent easement for shared use path at Saltese and Northwest Boulevard.
So this agreement and easement that I'm bringing before you is for the future project that we have for the sidewalk project, as it's called by ITD. It's actually going to be a shared use path, but we are putting that along the south edge or southwest edge of Saltese Way. And in some of these areas, as you can see, there is not quite enough right of way to fit the path in there. So we worked with them to get an agreement to grant us a permanent easement for that. And along with that, what the plan is that the path will actually come up here and use this slip lane. The slip lane will be turned into path as we build a new slip lane that comes out here at a more safe angle so that you're not looking back over your shoulder as you're merging on to Northwest Boulevard.
Thank you.
And with that, as I alluded to in the agreement, they are called Glacier Northwest Boulevard Celtice LLC that owns these properties. They have an access point right here, but I was not comfortable with how close the slip lane was to that access point. So once we move this, they'll be able to fully develop this to begin development of their property over there. And because of this working together, we were able to get them to contribute $16,000 towards our path project that we're going to be going to bid this fall with that for construction in the spring.
Can I ask you a quick question
Yeah.
on the new slip lane? Do you still have the capability of the stacking up in there?
It will reduce that a little bit just because the full length of it, but maybe 2 car lengths is all. But it'll be a safer intersection once that's completed because you won't have to look back over your shoulder to see traffic coming.
Guys, any questions?
Yeah, I have a bunch. So is this path going to be an extension of the path that we already have that's supposed to go all the way down along Celtice to where the Centennial Trail is? Is that part of this project too?
Well, west of Riverstone, in the portion of Celtice Way that's under construction right now, we're building that path in. And then there are some portions of the path that have been built in front of some of the developments in this area. And we're connecting into all those, and this will connect down to the Centennial Trail as well.
Specifically, there was a path that was going to go from the old folks' home past the 2 hotels.
Correct, this is the one, yes.
So this is part of that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And also, just for what it's worth, I've seen old maps, and that turn lane there going south on Celtice, that was actually railroad. And that's this property here, too. This was a railroad line at one point in time, which is why it's so weird and why it was so terrible. So the agreement easement allows for construction of the path and for future development opportunities on the subject property. Can you tell me what the future development opportunities are?
It was just that, that access point that I was speaking of there, because they want that to be a right in, right out right there, and with traffic. My concern was that people who are slowing down to get into their property right there would be rear-ended by people accelerating in the slip lane to merge in there.
Well, that
But
would
now
call
we've
for a
got
drive cam.
a considerable distance between them.
That's good. Then also, you said that Glacier will be paying $16,000 toward the reconstruction of the slip lane, as there's a benefit to them. But what's our portion of that?
Of the slip lane?
Yeah, the cost.
Well, that is, I'm not sure the exact cost because that is part of the full path or sidewalk project.
So it's part of the grant?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
But there was an overage in how much we were gonna have to, the estimates were coming in high on how much that path was going to cost. And this helps ease that quite a bit. And as well as using that existing slip lane as path, that was a cost savings there as well.
Okay. And so that was the best, just having it be its own separate little turn lane there, that's the best solution? You can't just add another lane, like a right turn only lane to that intersection?
ITD was not fond of that idea.
Really?
Because of just what you mentioned, the stacking. That would have reduced the queue length for vehicles at that point even more. And because they have jurisdiction over this intersection, the signal, they were not fans of that idea.
Well, glad you looked into it, thank you.
Yep.
Well, I guess it doesn't really matter, but it sounds like whoever this developer is separate from kind of the main Riverstone complex.
Correct, yes.
And then, and somewhere in our background materials, I saw where there was some plans for some retail or whatever, and will there also be access from the, well, like the down where I guess it's a movie theater and some of that, from the southern end to that property?
There will be no vehicle access there. There is going to be a shared access point here because it's the same property owners. So you'll be able to drive in through the whole development and out the other side. But I have talked to them about making a possible connection to this path so that pedestrians and bicyclists could get down to the movie theater from there.
Yeah, it's quite a changing grade right there.
It is, yes.
Well, I'm good.
And so they're gonna build like a little strip mall, I guess. That's what I see on page 24 of our,
Yes, I don't know who the tenants are slated to be at this point.
well, there's gonna be a Starbucks, so, you know, there's that.
Another one.
You gotta have a Starbucks, one right above the
I was
other
making
one.
that up, I don't know.
Right. I'll look for a motion, gentlemen.
So I move to approve the agreement and permanent easement for a shared use path on Celtice Way at Northwest Boulevard.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any other comments, suggestions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving right along. Terry Pickle from the Water Department, welcome.
Good afternoon. A few items for you this afternoon. The first one being the selection of our consultant for our upcoming water rate study. We went out in late July with an RFP requesting consultants. There was approximately 9 firms that pulled the RFP from our city clerk's office, and we were expecting some good participation, and we only received 1 RFP back from FCS Group. They were the consultant on the last rate study in 2012, along with the Water Comprehensive Plan update. And so we feel comfortable that they're up to speed on it. I've talked to the consultant. They have been reviewing where we're at rate-wise and feel we're in a good situation there. And so we would like to have them appointed as, or selected as the approved consultant so that we can enter into negotiations for a contract with them. So that's what I was looking for, was council approval to do so.
Dan?
Yeah, just a question on, I understand part of this process is for them to try to look into the future and make sure that we've got enough, revenue coming in to meet the needs of what we think we might need to do. But equally important, it's been in the news lately, and I don't know if it was a Supreme Court case or whatever, but I mean, there are times when people get in, like in our case, get into trouble by charging too much. And so we want to make sure we make that balance between it's supposed to be just enough for what it's supposed to do, but not an extra or excessive amount. So I assume that's part of what they look at too, is not too little and not too much.
Right.
So
Try to hit the balance there between what is anticipated is going to be cost, what our anticipated needs are identified by the 2012 comprehensive plan. We'll use that as our base to move forward into the future, as we've done previously with other comp plans that we have had, and try to follow that schedule. We have to adjust dates to meet our actual needs. Some are a little later out, some of them are a little earlier. We just hit 41 million gallons a day August 3rd. Our maximum capacity is just under 44, so we're knocking on the door for another well. We've got a site out on Hutter that we're looking at, working on getting a test well put together. So those are items we're looking at. We also looked at doing a reservoir this year. The water study determined that the reservoir wasn't actually needed at this time, wasn't going to resolve the issues we had, and so we're looking at some other ways to fix our shortage in the short time till we can get another well in the general zone, and then this reservoir will still be needed in the future at build out, but not exactly right now. So.
and again, just to make sure that we're hitting the nexus between what we charge and that it's actually something that, you know, part of the project versus just it's nice to generate more money. So
Right, we want to be reasonable with that, yes.
Mr. Guggen?
Thank you, Mr. McEvers. So 5 years, it's been 5 years since we did a rate analysis. And in your staff report, it says, industry practices to conduct water rate analysis on a routine basis. And you guys try to be consistent with a comprehensive review for every 5 years. So Why 5 years? Why not 10?
You can do it 10, but the longer you push it out, the less accurate your rate study is on that long term. If you can keep it to, actually they recommend 3 to 5 on the AWWA standard. That way you can you go back and readjust your rates as you need to. If you're not accruing enough, or if you're over, you need to back those rates back off. It gives you a little more shorter window, a little more accuracy.
This is a puzzlement to me. So it seems like we do a rate study, and then it says, invariably, we need to raise our rates. So we phase them in over 5 years, which coincidentally is the same time we do a rate study that invariably says we need to raise our rates, which we do over 5 years. And so it's like this eternal cycle that we raise rates. Is there any way to escape that?
Not really. I mean, your cost of labor, your cost of materials for your construction, your cost of maintenance continually goes up just as your cost of living does. And so by phasing it in over 5 years, we're behind the curve the full time. We don't actually get to that point where we actually should have been the first year we phased it in. So we're still trying to play catch up through there. We've done our best to do our best to maximize efficiencies and keep those costs as low as we can. And by utilizing the rate study, we'll be able to see whether we've been successful with that or not, or whether we're still behind the 8 ball on it.
So it's not a matter of if we're going to have to raise rates, but the point is again, to hit that right zone.
Yeah.
It's bacon.
So let me change the subject a little. So these guys have done it before, so that's probably good, right? They kind of know the numbers from the history. So basically, you're plugging in new use, potential new well, new hole, yeah, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff. It's the same, it's just, like he said, 5 years later.
Right.
You know, we've talked, Mr. Gookin's talked about water in bathrooms with real water, not outhouses. I've brought up the fact that the city has to pay the water department for all its water, for watering the parks, and it sort of rubs us guys that don't really get it. But I'm looking here and I'm seeing that you guys are gonna go down the path of looking for taking care of elderly people, fixed income, stuff like that. If you can go that way, if you can go down that path to help people, our citizens, is it reasonable to ask that they also look at what the government pays for its water? Do you follow what I mean? It's the same people.
Yeah,
And I understand structure, but we're looking to try and help some folks over here. Is there any methodology that would stand the test of time that we could help ourselves in reduced rates or, you know, the green parks? Big part of our park overhead is the water, and it's what makes it work. I get that.
Right.
I'm just wondering, is that even, I'm
That would
stretching.
probably be more of a question on the financial side of it, and would probably involve Troy. I'm not sure what we can do there. We do work with our Parks Department to try to help them.
Oh, you do?
Make efficiency of that we help them purchase CalSense products, so they can actually reduce their overall irrigation. We're working systematically on the parks with that. So we've been trying to do that on a scale as much as possible in our conservation program.
in this rate study, is there a chance that you can do different rates for people who are not in the city?
That's one thing we'll be looking at, because that's been asked as part of our out of service or out of city service
Right.
system. We'll also look at the boosted zones where you have to pump water twice. So that will be part of the rate study. The last time we looked at that, the rate was so outrageous, it just wasn't doable, but you've got your rate payers within the city in certain zones, actually paying a portion of the cost for the people that live in the boosted zones.
Right.
So that's one of the things we'll be
similar
looking
to-
at, see whether there's some advantage or disadvantage to that.
So similar to up on,
Armstrong.
Armstrong
and-
has its
yep,
own kind of
yep,
thing.
up on Stanley Hill and, yep.
Right, so that's why, while you already kind of specialize in making things fair, I was wondering about water in the park, going, it's fair because everybody participates in it. So would you pay an extra quarter, 25 cents times all our folks to be able to water the parks, and you don't get a check from the government, you get it from
Yeah.
the ratepayers. You
That's-
follow?
That's subsidizing, and that's kind of a,
Well,
that's a
but-
gray area, yes.
But you're
so,
talking
yeah.
about helping people on fixed income.
Right.
And isn't that somewhat the
We
same?
do that, or actually wastewater does that as well with kind of a reduced sewer rate.
Right.
For that portion of it for a fixed amount of use. So that's, I know it has been done around the country, and this would be something that'll be looked at, so.
No, I just thought, here we were spending the money, let these guys brainstorm some different places, and,
Right.
you know, again, we talk about this a lot, you and I, because I'm thinking, God, this is killing me.
Right.
And
And FCFs is one of the premier groups that works around the country
Yeah.
doing a lot of this stuff. So that's why I feel very comfortable with
it would be
them.
just interesting to put that on their little note to say, hey, what about looking at it this way or that way?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Just that, you know, there's an appeal to, you know, like, gee, why should we charge ourselves for that? And it, you know, kind of makes a good emotional feel good, but the reality is you got to pay for it some way.
Right.
And a lot of what this is, I mean, it's a function of accounting, that there is a real cost, and I think we want to identify and measure that real cost. Then, separate from that, you could decide to make some policies that affect that. Basically, you know, I'm all for some progressive social policies that maybe help some of those low income and seniors, but it should be not just kind of a feel-good mechanism. It should be a legitimate, thoughtful. So anyway, I think this is probably the right way to
Look
go.
at it.
So.
No, I hear you.
We also have to be careful when we get into all these multiple rates is how much are we impacting the finance department on trying to keep track of all this
Oh,
stuff,
we don't
too.
care about
They
that.
have computers, they're fine.
I have to work with them.
Are
We'll
we your,
just get them another accountant. Yes.
are we your number one customer then, the city?
School district, I believe, is.
Really?
Yes.
You see, and that's why we can't cut ourselves a deal, because then we'd have to cut a deal for the school district and the county and all the nonprofits that
talked
start
Yeah, it's
walking
all a
forward,
private
you know,
nonprofit.
and so
Oh, we
it's like.
tried that, didn't we?
And so it's always just seems like ridiculous that we're, you know, essentially taking money from over here and
Right.
moving it over
Changing
here.
pockets.
And, you know, it's like, and we see that, they see that on the parks bill and everywhere else. I mean, it's kind of funny. We even pay our own building permit fees and all this other stuff, and I'm sure it just gets nuts. But that's the park thing, you know, that I keep bringing up with the toilets is actually a sewer thing.
Right.
That's the sewer hookup is what kills us there. You guys are cool on that. I mean, hopefully they're washing their hands, but
And we
it's the
should just-
flushing that's.
We should just bite the bullet and do it, do good ones. But
Well,
anyway,
and,
I
yeah,
would
it's expensive.
make a motion if we're ready.
Go.
Especially since it's very hard for Mr. Gookin to make motions about things that are going to cost more. So-
Oh, Mr. Gugan will have his say.
So I will, let's see, recommend to City Council that the FCS Group be the selected consultant for the 2018 water rate study and authorize staff to enter into negotiations with the consultant for a service contract to be brought back to the City Council for approval.
And I'm not ready to go forward with this yet because, as I told Mr. Pickle before the meeting, I have a copy of the comprehensive plan from 2012, and I want to review the rate study last time. So I want to know what I'm getting into beforehand, and if I have that, then when we come to the next council meeting, where this will be an agenda item, then I will have the information to be able to ask the questions about rate studies moving forward, which is, I would feel much more comfortable doing that. So I would second your motion if it's to place it on the agenda.
I'm good with that.
Okay,
Yep.
so I will second.
Okay.
Yep.
Been moved and second. Any other comments, thoughts? Good idea?
Yeah.
We'll put that on the
We'll
agenda,
wait, let's
please.
vote.
All those, I have this vibe going. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Now we're good.
Okay, moving on.
All right.
Terry Pickle again,
Thank
for
you.
more money.
We are actually, we're at the Bastille Booster Station.
Speaking of boosters.
Yes. I thought you had a question there.
No, I mean, we were just talking about the
Yep.
Armstrong Park booster and the
Right.
Stanley Hill booster, and here we
Right.
are.
This is the project in lieu of the reservoir we were looking at building this year. We've known for quite some time since the Tubbs Hill tank was installed that it has not worked properly. We can't draw the water out of it that we need to at the proper time. A main reason because it is located too far from the other reservoirs and too close to the wells. So we've talked about over the years trying to figure out some way to put a booster pump on there to draw the water out when we needed it. So we have designed a small booster station right alongside the tank that can be SCADA controlled, that can actually, at peak periods, we can kick the pump on with a variable speed drive on it and pull the water from the tank and push it into the system.
Jesus.
So that's what we were working on. We went out to bids in July, I believe it was, and they received the bids back on August 15th. We only received 2 bids. We had about 4 contractors that had originally looked at it. It's a little bit different type of a project. It's on a hillside there somewhat, kind of down in the restricted area. The bids came back extremely high. The lowest bid was $727,500. That was from Award Construction. In the evaluation, we determined that the Award Construction did not have their Public Works Contractor's license at the time of bid, which is kind of if it's city funding, that makes it unresponsive. If it's federal funding, they can actually bid before they have their license. So since it's city funding, they made it a non-responsive bid. They do have their Public Works Contractor's license. They got it last Friday. But still, it's way over budget. We budgeted, the engineer's estimate was $500,000. We budgeted $568,000. I don't feel comfortable coming back and asking for an adjustment to the budget. This is really kind of crazy in price, and we felt it was due to everybody being so busy right now, they don't have time to do it. Our timing schedule from when we can have the tank out of service is tight from October 1 to April 1st, and they felt that they couldn't build the project in that time, so I'm recommending that we reject the bids. So we will retool and come back with something later.
So if I understand, this is weird to me because normally you do a booster to push water
Yes.
up, but we're actually building a booster to suck water out of the tank.
Push it into the general zone. Yes.
Gravity isn't doing the job.
Gravity isn't doing the job, no.
That blows.
Yes.
You mentioned something, and it wasn't in the staff report, but you mentioned something about the restricted area. What's the restricted area in Best Hills?
Oh, just it's in the fenced area that we have a 1 acre site there, and it's kind of in.
Oh,
the
that.
boosters
Okay, that's what you were
sit
meaning.
inside that fenced
It
area.
sounded
So it's
mysterious.
a tight building area.
So we hide leaves.
That's where we put all the leaves. No, see, you got such a weird system. If I ever studied fluid dynamics engineering, it would be fascinating to look at this system that you have and the fact that you can't get water out of a tank fast enough.
Right.
So you have to have a pump draw the water out of the tank, which makes it seem like the tank would just crumple like a tin can or something.
It's vented, so it doesn't do that.
Wow. I mean, that's freaky stuff.
It is. It was a poor design. I'm not sure whatever promulgated that. They've tried to resolve it with oversized piping over the years, and it just has not worked.
That is weird. Okay.
So.
Well, you've somewhat answered the questions about maybe why, because it is odd for most of the stuff we do, the estimates seem to be pretty right on, but this one, it's like half again as much. But like I say, it's a kind of a unique process, and then it sounds like, unfortunately, from, Sam saying recently that, the cost of doing business in a booming market, is kind of going up.
Yeah.
And so is the long-term plan that if you back off for maybe a year or two, it'll cool off? Or when would you anticipate
We are
coming
looking
back?
at other options there. We may take on the piping portion of it ourselves, because that seemed to be where everybody was concerned about because of some rock there. And we have the capability of, through the winter, we've got tarps and everything. We can tarp the ground, keep it thawed. We could go in there and do the piping work ourselves, then have the building built around it. It's kind of a little backwards in the process, but that's one of the options we're looking at. We're also going to discuss with the contractors, now that we've, once we officially reject the bids, we can go back and talk to the contractors and see what exactly upset them about the bid.
Yeah.
So there are other options there.
This
So
just
we're-
gets so familiar, doesn't it? I mean, the fact that the Government Way was overbid, I forget what else, but it just seems like it's happening. It's not a surprise,
No, it's not.
so.
So I have a little history with that well besides leaves and stuff, or that back early on went and spent the day with the boys, and we were tapping that main pipe that comes out of there right down near Government Way, I guess or it's 15th Street, comes down. And it's a huge pipe. It's
16
like-
inch, yeah.
Looks like 6 feet around, and we're poking a hole to get a faucet in it or something, but it made me aware of how the water flows. So you're saying that that pipe, that 6-foot pipe, doesn't drain it enough or doesn't push out enough?
What they say is hydraulically, it just does not work. It does not, like I said, the tanks, the main tanks over on Tubbs Hill are just too far away. And that one's close to the sources. Water flows to the least path of resistance, so it's easier to push water there, but it's more difficult to bring it back out because the other tanks are trying to offset that tank. So it's crazy the way it's set up.
So
And
then when you say talk about potentially doing the pipe work yourself, you're not talking about that particular pipe, the Audi, the pipe
it'll be
that
at the
comes
base
down
of
the
the
mountain?
tank. Yes, it's a 16-inch pipe at the base of the tank.
And that's where the pump would go?
Yes.
So you would be sucking it here and pushing it there?
Yep.
Okay. And so that's up by the tank, you're saying, not down?
No, it's right at
Stream.
at the southwest corner of the tank.
Gotcha. Okay. Crazy.
It is crazy.
But I'll take a motion if we got one.
Oh, sure, I would move that
It's your turn.
we recommend to council to reject the bids on the Best Hill Booster Station for the reasons given.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Any other questions? Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
You consent that?
Okay.
Sorry about
Last
that.
item,
It's a
Terry.
bummer.
Terry,
Yeah, it's a
thanks.
bummer, yeah. We were hoping to get it all done and turnkey by April 1st, and unfortunately that won't work, so. The third item, just discovered late today, it was gonna end up being an informational item rather than any action by the committee, because it has to go before council for declaration and setting of a public hearing. We're looking at a piece of property, or surplusing a piece of property on the northeast corner of Howard and Niter. Between Howard and Fruitland, we have a odd-shaped piece of property there. We did a test well in 2000, I believe it was, and it was very sandy. So it wasn't conducive to put a well there. We've been hanging on that piece of property, so we wish to go ahead and declare it surplus. Mr. Tymason has given us an estimate of $48,000 in value for the property. We'd probably look at a setting of a value of $40,000 minimum for a bid on it to go through the process, but I just wanted to bring it before the committee so that you folks are aware of it. That'll be coming forward to a future council meeting. I'm not sure exactly when we'll do that. We still got some more stuff we need to go through and make sure we have our ducks in a row.
Do you remember what you paid for it?
I do not. We can find that, so.
It was,
I think it was
It's-
dedicated, but I'm not sure.
and this has to go, this is, so the sale, the proceeds would go to the water department.
Yes.
Questions?
Weird looking lot.
It is. It's a really odd-shaped lot. It does have frontage on Fruitland, so it does have that. It has a water service. Yes, it's enough for a driveway legally, so yes. And it does have an existing 6-inch well that could be utilized for irrigation.
Yeah.
Remember, and I guess there's no motion on this. So
Oh, that's right. We're good.
Information item only.
Anything
that'll
else for the
come
good of
back.
all?
Enjoy the weather.
To adjourn.
To adjourn.
Been moved and
Second?
seconded.
Aye.
All those in favor? We're
Aye, aye.
adjourned. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
So I guess we don't want to.